It's my pleasure today to have the opportunity to speak to Chris Bailey, co-founder and Chief Innovation Officer at CoverGenius. From their start in Stone & Chalk in Sydney, CoverGenius has pioneered embedded insurance that protects the global customers of the world's largest digital companies. The company is now a leading global player in embedded finance and Australia's newest fintech unicorn. Hi, Chris, how are you? Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Annie. Great to be here and great to see a familiar face.
And you're dialing in from Amsterdam, is that right?
I am. Yeah, the nature of a global business is that when there's a pandemic, it's hard to do what you actually need to do, which is get out to all the offices. And B, when lockdown ends, then you're kind of like one of the first on a plane. Although I was lucky enough to slip away a bit earlier, but we've got a sizable operation in Amsterdam and in the US. I've spent the last 2 to 3 months abroad.
Awesome. Now, for people who don't know CoverGenius, can you tell us in a nutshell what you do? What's your elevator pitch?
Yeah, sure. So we're the insurtech for embedded insurance. So embedded insurance, similar to many of you would be familiar with embedded finance. It's a similar play where we're protecting the customers of the world's largest digital companies, either at the point of sale or at the point of sign up. And we perform that function around the world. We're a global insurtech. With licensing in over 60 countries, 50 US states, and we have some marquee names, including Amazon or Shopee in Southeast Asia, Intuit in the US. Booking.com is a major partner, and many others across a whole range of industries.
Super impressive list of partners. Now, what's the best piece of feedback you've received from an end customer, whether they be, like an end customer or a partner, or maybe both?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thinking back to the early days of CoverGenius, when in 2014, where we we knew what the problem was, and then we were building an API for it. And then at the end of 2014, we had really our first sales call, which was with a Booking.com executive, which was an introduction through one of their directors, a New Zealand-born fellow, and he kindly introduced us. And the feedback on the spot was really positive because it was exactly what they were looking for, both the ability to deliver insurance from, or call it protection, to deliver protection for global customers, in their case for a line of insurance that had been very difficult for them to obtain, and that they weren't really interested in being licensed for the distribution of that as the kind of main MGA licensee. So and all delivered from an API. So that's really what they're after. They just didn't think it existed, and that's the role of startups, to identify those problems and then build from there.
And what about your end customers? What are they saying about CoverGenius?
Oh, look, we really focus on claims. So that's the best way for us to identify how customers perceive us. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're in the insurance business, then everything kind of matters about claims. So now it's not necessarily just paying out every claim. What matters is the quality of the experience for the customer. And as a tech business, we're in a leading position to be able to kind of seamlessly unify all the strands of a claim experience, from the initial quote and bind of a policy, through to the management of their policy and their account and details, through to the when times get tough or something goes wrong, we're there as the partner to help protect those customers. A critical part of what we do is actually doing all the licensing. So wherever we're licensed to distribute insurance, we're also we're also licensed to adjust claims as well. And that puts us in a huge advantage. It is a huge responsibility. But the big advantage versus a traditional insurer is that we actually, due to the digital nature of the whole process that I just outlined, we know who the customer is from a starting point. So you don't have to re-enter your details. It's a digital with some call center support experience, but there's no paperwork. For instance, most claims around the world are still paid out by check. For instance, in the US, that's going to add something like 6 days as a minimum to the claim settlement time. Checks get lost, sometimes they bounce, So we pay in the most efficient manner possible, which is electronically into 90 plus currencies around the world, into any bank account, etc. So really nailing that part of it has been a huge part of our strategy since day one. And in doing so, then you can also do a lot of fraud detection, and if you've got all that digital data from the outset, then you can start to draw correlations and apply some data science to be able to detect certain things, and in doing so, save ourselves and our insurers quite a bit of money, and continue to improve on that. But ultimately, it all, to answer the question, it all comes back to claims, and we measure ourselves. We gauge ourselves on an NPS basis post claim, and to date, ours is the highest that I've seen globally, and that's 65 plus.
Now, let's take a step back to day one. Can you tell us a bit about the kind of creation story for Coverage Genius? What was the moment that led you to develop and build out this company?
Yeah, so it was a classic thing of actually knowing the problem firsthand, and then being in a position to be able to do it, having come from a tech background. So I'd previously worked at Google. My business partner Angus had worked at Yahoo. And in different roles with different skill sets. But we had set up an online travel agency, and part of the reason to do so was because we knew that ancillary revenue could be optimized a lot more, and we would see everywhere that the insurance wasn't particularly well done, and so we set out to kind of improve that, and that will be our kind of competitive advantage, so to speak. But of course, two things: one, the world doesn't need another OTA, and secondly, we having sat on that side of the fence, we realized really quickly the problem was actually the insurers. So traditional insurers, they kind of lacked the platform for the delivery. So anyone that wanted to sell insurance would have to go and build effectively and try and guess what would be required from a platform to be able to push any line, potentially any line of insurance into their front end from an API. It's just a really, really difficult position that anyone that wanted to distribute insurance would be put into. And then on the coordination of supply. So, if you went to a traditional insurer, it's still the case, and you had customers from France, then you'd be told you got to go and speak to, Pierre in Paris. And if you had customers from where I'm in Amsterdam, then you'd be told you got to go and speak to Nils, who's the country lead or whatever the case is in Amsterdam. And you just end up with this really really difficult navigation process of getting global supply from your supposed global insurance partner. And so, we were in a position to be able to come forth with an API that was, from a single call, be able to return any policy to any customer anywhere in the world, and that we would look after all the licensing and all the coordination and all of the really hardcore insurance work, and then create that digital journey off the back of it for the claims processing, etc. So that's kind of what we set out to do. And off the back of that first call that we had back in late 2014. You know, we were up and running with a significant opportunity by middle of 2015.
So we're about 7 years into the journey now. Is that right?
Yeah,
And-
yeah.
Yeah.
Feels like maybe a couple of lifetimes longer, but yeah.
And you've been recognized as one of the fastest growing companies in Asia Pacific. Where do you see the opportunities and challenges in APAC for embedded insurance?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of opportunities and challenges. From the challenge perspective, you've got different regulators and no kind of global, no kind of regional passporting or anything between them. So, you know, 10 in Southeast Asia, and then, you know, Korea, Japan as well, are both in our remit, and India is also run from our APAC team. So, so getting licensed in all those places is difficult. So, you know, it's both an opportunity and a challenge. You know, we've gone and done all that, so our partners get to leverage our framework around that. But, you know, you compare that to Europe, for instance, where there's 28 member countries of the EU, and it's passported so that if you can have a product that's licensed and regulated by one of those 28 authorities, then the other 27 will accept it. So you don't have to go through and kind of do filings into all those countries, etc. So, you know, that it is a little bit different in APAC. But you know, as I said, that presents opportunities because it kind of points to the value that we as someone who set out to solve these sorts of challenges globally has been able to do. So, you know, 50 US state licenses is also really challenging, but you know, we've gone and done that. So, you know, it's the nature of what we do, which, you know, working in heavily regulated industries, once you are regulated and have gone through that, then it's significant opportunity as well. But I think also on the opportunity front, I'd probably point to just the really, really dynamic digital environment there. Partners like Shopee for us, and several others, and more names coming through. We've got you know, for instance, Olar and Pepperfry in India, two significant partners for us. So just the really exciting opportunities, just the growth in the region. You know, Shopee's the largest company in Southeast Asia. It's listed in the US. You know, you also got Coupang in Korea, Flipkart in India, and several Indonesian businesses that are really taking the leadership for the economy in their regions. It's just really exciting to see and to be part of that journey, given that those are the sorts of companies that we're speaking to every single day.
And we're here as part of the Singapore FinTech Festival. So can you comment specifically on the Singaporean market?
Yeah, well, there's kind of really interesting kind of unicorns there, like Carousel and several others as well. You know, obviously smaller market than some of the other ones that I've touched on, and you know, the homegrown businesses are definitely kind of not at the size of the likes of Shopee, but you know, we do a lot of business in Singapore, and that's where everything's headquartered. So we think of Singapore more as the regional access hub for us, and we've been there for several years now. It's a, you know, hugely what we're able to do from Singapore is hugely important for our growth and kind of success.
And now you've touched on this already a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is about embedded finance products such as insurance and e-commerce that work so well together?
Yeah, look, it's all about the removal of a second step. That's how we think of it. So if you think about insurance, anyone in the insurance industry will be able to tell you a lot about underinsurance or uninsurance, and And that's a structural problem that's always been there. Looking at a global level, the kind of amount of underinsurance is kind of varies depending on who you ask, but let's say it's something like 80%, 90% maybe, of the total insurance opportunity, i.e. all the assets and lives, etc., that could be insured, actually not. So it's going to be something like 80 to 90% underinsurance. So what does that actually mean from the perspective of someone entering into the industry with a technology solution? Well, it's a huge opportunity, right? And the reason why there is such structural underinsurance is because it's a second step. So if you're buying a property, then you've got to go and take a second step, usually to go and get the insurance. If you're looking to sublet your place or put it on a short-term rental marketplace, then getting the insurance to cover that sort of activity is once again a second step. So no matter what having a baby, you want to get life insurance, it's obviously a second step to having a baby. Look, embedded insurance is able to join the dots, right? So at the time of whatever the underlying activity is, then it's all about surfacing a relevant, tailored insurance product that's going to protect the person or the activity or the event or the item, and leverage the knowledge of the data, it being digital, to make that a really highly relevant and therefore highly accepted offer to the customer. So that's what it is in a long form answer, but really it's, if I were to shorten it, I'd say it's the ability to deliver protection at the right time, at the right place.
I'm sure you're approached all the time by people who want to partner with you. Are you tempted to, are you going to stay just as an insurance provider, or are you tempted to branch out into other finance products?
Oh, look, I think just, if we take a step back and think about what insurance is and the sheer size of it, it's the world's largest industry, I believe. It's we're creating very significant kind of structural change by allowing digital companies to take their rightful seat at the table, right? They all have insurance teams, whereas when we started, that wasn't the case. They all know that they want to be delivering protection to their global customers, and so we do. We sign up a lot of new partners, and they tend to be digital companies, and they're the world's largest at what they do. So, I think it does talk to the huge opportunity that's in front of that's coming up for embedded insurance. We think we're at the very start of it. It's similar to embedded finance, but it's kind of like it's 10 years later in a sense, or it's kind of, it feels to me sometimes like it's where fintech might have been 10 years ago. I've just returned from Money 2020, for instance, in the US. And if you look across if you scan the various sub-verticals that have an insurance opportunity and they're kind of really interested in it, it's really early days. The embedded insurance, the number of neobanks that have a truly embedded offering, you could count globally on one hand. Similarly, if you looked at core banking systems and their ability to provide relevant insurances for all their customers, embedded finance, so the likes of Afterpay, etc. None of those guys are actually leveraging the opportunity in front of them to get protection in front of those customers that are using their checkout. So across the board, and that's just one industry. So yeah, it is a huge opportunity. There's a big structural change that's undergoing, and maybe that kind of gives an indication of why we focus just on insurance.
Awesome. So let's change tact a bit and talk about, so you're obviously in Amsterdam now, but you're based in Sydney. How do you run a global unicorn from Sydney, and why have you chosen to continue running Cover Genius HQ'd in Sydney? How do your people connect and collaborate across different currencies, time zones, languages, and cultures?
Yeah, it's look, I think that we are a global business meant that we could set up from Sydney. By that I actually mean the product is global as well, right? So look, Angus spent a lot of our early years in the US. We've got homegrown leadership teams in US, LATAM, Europe, India, North Asia, Southeast Asia, etc. So we have over the years obviously built our kind of autonomous leadership for the regions, and we obviously Angus and I and other team members spend a lot of time in planes, and that kind of just is the way it is. A bit more difficult in the last kind of 18 months, but that's the nature of what we do, and it's not unusual, to be honest. So being a global business with a global product has meant that it doesn't really matter where we were. If I was a London native, then maybe the time zones might have been a little bit better, but they would have been terrible for Southeast Asia or something anyway. So it's the nature of what we do. So coordinating everything as we've grown has not been too problematic, us being a software business.
And I read recently in one of your posts that your team values were created early on when there's just a handful of you, and that they've held up pretty well over the years. Can you tell us a bit about those team values and how they've contributed to your success?
Yeah. So we did lay them out really early on. The emphasis was the individual's role within a team. So we make it our own. Talks about every individual has the opportunity to spot things and improve them, and take ownership, right? And they're given it as well, which is kind of really important. We're not a company that seeks to stop people contributing, because if we were doing that and we were trying to address the size of and very technically challenging nature of what we do, then it'd be really stifling, and you wouldn't get the opportunity to have things bubble up. And so that relates to the next value, which is we make it better, which is therefore putting the responsibility on everyone to improve things. That nature, the requirement to continuously improve is super important. And then working together is obviously kind of the nature of the team. And then lastly is we create magic, which is kind of the genie in a bottle sort of moment, which we do get occasionally, where we're doing genuinely world first things, and this sort of ability to celebrate, when we succeed together, which was the third value, then creating magic, and celebrating and recognizing those world firsts that we do. And there's been a lot of those over the years, and it's sort of super important that we're recognizing those. And then it's probably also worthwhile saying that our vision that we laid out back in 2014 is exactly the same as what it is now. And that's to enable the world's largest digital companies to protect their global customers, and that's kind of stayed true.
And on that point of magic, so you recently raised a 100 million Series C round, quite a feat for an insurance product. And yeah, so I guess, you've been, you started off as Stone & Chalk back in Sydney, 2014. You're now a truly global business doing global deals. What is it about Sydney as a financial technology innovation hub that has made this success possible?
Yeah, it's look, Sydney's been part of it. I think it's a pretty collaborative, very hardworking place. We've been advantaged from having some awareness and brand recognition from a talent perspective. Look, to be honest, I think the challenges of having zero migration over the last 19 months are yet to be felt from a kind of macro level, but we see them at a micro level. That's led to us kind of changing tack in terms of where we're recruiting from. We're doing a lot more remote hires on US and European time zones. And that's where most of our roles are being filled. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of, it's obviously out of our control, but we need to be going where the talent is. And Australia does heavily rely on skilled migration programs, which have been advantageous for us, but obviously a little bit challenged at the moment. So, look, what is it about Australia? I wouldn't kind of limit to being Sydney, but what is it about Australia? Look, I think wherever you go in the world, Australians are recognised for their that they kind of punch above their weight in terms of their how they're perceived and recognised and rewarded, and within a lot of corporates all around the world. You'll see just always very positive feedback on Australians. And look, I think, without being kind of overly jingoistic about it, like it is something about the culture that lends itself to being able to do global businesses well. There's been several meteoric successes that I'm sure that we're all aware of coming out of Sydney, and the nature of it is that there's now solid venture capital portfolios that are backing companies that are looking to do big things on a global level. Our Series B was led by King River Capital, which is a Sydney and San Fran VC, started by two Americans that wanted to tap the local opportunities, which are tremendous, and they've made some significant investments down under, and then the Series C being led by Sompo, which is Japan's biggest insurer. Important strategic partner for us. It's the first time we've taken an insurer as a capital partner, but it's a testament to their belief in embedded insurance as the future of insurance.
And how are you planning on spending the money?
Well, look, we've been lucky in the past that we off the nature of what we did was that it was kind of always cash flow accretive. So for a long time we've been profitable, and then when it comes to doing a kind of more significant raise, then the clear use of that is all about scaling to more partners in more countries, that's it's a big investment in BD, but the nature of what we do is that there's huge support structures that enable us to leverage all the licenses that I've talked about, but also build all the platforms so that it it's highly configurable, so that it can distribute any new line of insurance, and then obviously that all those duck legs under the water are what makes the BD, the business development that goes on above the water, actually succeed and fly.
And obviously, you've spoken about scale, but beyond scale, what's the next big thing for Cover Genius? What have you got next on your product roadmap?
Well, really, it's just a continuation of what we do. We back in 2016, 17, after a lot of early success just in one niche line of insurance, that's when we really invested in our platform, our new platform, which is called Xcover. We call it new, but it was a couple of years of development, and then it was, it had its first partner in 2019, and then from there it's been a tremendous success, really. But we needed to experience and understand everything that we had in our first platform, which was really only built for one line of insurance, and then to understand that and then be able to kind of expand that. So, and then the other kind of core parts of the platform are so that's called Xcover, and then we have a data analytics platform within it, a microservices service within that, and then our claim engine, which is another microservice off the back of that. So, it's we kind of nailed those three core platform priorities, and everything since then has been some investment into one part into some part of those three, but that's kind of what our whole raison d'etre has been since day dot, is to be able to do price optimized protection. So that's the analytics service that delivers high NPS, which is the claim service, and then for any line of insurance for any partner globally, which is Xcover.
And now for my last question, I'd love you to reflect on your founder's journey. Building a startup is obviously, quite a journey of ups and downs. Looking back, is there any particular moment that was absolutely pivotal to your success? I'm sure there were many, but what are some of those moments?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's heaps. I mean, but look, the background was Angus and I were mates from university, and we had when I was at Google, it was kind of like before the VC industry had really sprung up in Sydney, back then you basically bootstrapped. That's what you did. So we tried a few things, and then obviously the kind of going advice back at the time was like, try three things and one of them will stick. Pretty much that was the case. So look, I think there's lots of kind of funny things along the way. Probably the best advice is sometimes the ones that you don't take. So we would go and speak to insurance companies, all the time, and traditional insurers, and they'd tell you it was impossible, because in their experience it was. None of them had platforms, or those that did couldn't really sell platform. They could only sell insurance, them being an insurance company. So when we would speak to people and they'd say that it's impossible, then we'd walk out of the room and kind of give ourselves high fives, and then go back to the office and continue the work to prove them wrong. And so I think those sorts of moments are also kind of meaningful. And then, as I mentioned earlier, having that kind of early validation from a giant company like Booking.com or something, like them saying that it actually answers to their need, and overlooking the fact that you're kind of relatively small business at the time, but them putting that faith in you that you can deliver what you've set out to do, and do what the label on the can says. Then that's kind of that's kind of always been super important for us. And then over time, once we've been able to deliver for those sorts of partners, then other partners of their ilk see the logic in choosing a partner that's kind of really focused on them. So yeah, I think there's some of those things along the way. There's been lots of lots of fun, lots of contributions from all sorts of people. When we kind of made the announcement around the Series C, a lot of familiar faces from, back in the olden days pop up, and that's always nice to think of how many hundreds and hundreds of people have contributed to it. It's a testament to all of their backbreaking work back in the day, and the current team's work, and what they've got in front of them in terms of trying to step up as we continue this global expansion.
Wow. Well, it certainly has been, incredible to hear your story and journey. Thank you so much for sharing all of those insights with us. Yeah, really appreciate it. It's always good to reconnect with our alumni. And yeah, it's been awesome to have front row seats to watch your impressive growth over the past 7 years. So thanks so much for joining us at the Singapore FinTech Festival.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks to Annie. It's great to see you again. We used to spend a hell of a lot more time together than we do these days. Thank you also to the Singapore FinTech Festival, to Austrade, who's been a great partner of ours since we popped up on their radar as the New South Wales Exporter of the Year about 4 years ago, and they've been really helpful for us as we've kind of expanded into new regions globally. And lastly, to everyone kind of sitting at home who's kind of been through a lot over the last 19-20 months, thank you all for listening, and hopefully this is kind of inspiring, and the challenges of recent times are seen as something that helps build you and build your idea and your next innovation, because it's times like these that are actually the defining moments for the next wave of fintech giants are born from this sort of adversity. So best of luck with your own initiatives, and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thanks so much, Chris. Best of luck on this next leg of the journey.
Thank you.